Okay, a really quick experiment here. Definitely not a how-to, but just clicking the record button on my camera here as I try something. I wanted to try to do a pigment ink and dye-based ink mix, okay? Now I just have this sponge here. I tried this kitchen sponge on a previous video and it worked just fine in terms of some ink application. I mean, you could cut these, apart and tailor them to kind of your own specifications in terms of shape and size here. I'm just going with the entire thing right here. And this is a really used, kind of beat up sponge, and it's kind of crumbling, as you can see, right before my eyes. I was going to toss it out, but I thought, let's see what we can do with it. And I'm just going to do these little streaks right here. I'm keeping things a little bit more irregular here too. Gosh, this is really falling apart. If you try this, you might want to use or if this comes out decent, you might want to try a new sponge, not this like old one like I'm doing. Alright, so I'm just going with a couple different dye-based inks here. That was a number 10 light blue from Marvy. This is some fusion of it's a Memento, I think. No, it was I think it's Blueprint Sketch Distress. Okay. I'm not trying to keep this really smooth either. I just want to get some kind of background going in here, which I'll try some other things on. I don't know, this is really dry here. Let me try to get a lot more of that ink on here. Okay. Okay, just trying to apply this to get some kind of glowing, I don't know, background, surface to stamp my imagery on. I'm spending a little bit more time on it than I thought I would. I don't know, after I get something going, then I think, this is just going to be a little experiment. But then inevitably, I'm just like anyone else. I want it to come out as potentially as well as I can make it. So, I don't know. Let's apply a little bit more layering of the tone, and just to make it look a little bit more rich and saturated. Okay. Okay, that was with, I don't know, about 3 different types of blue. And let's use a little bit of black here. Okay. And I'm just using that same little bit of sponge there. Okay, so trying to make these little curtains here of light a la the Northern Lights. Alright, one thing that I don't like is, and it's not indicative of, I don't think, this style of kitchen sponge, it's just that this sponge was, I don't know, months old. And, ready to be tossed out, which made it a good candidate for experimentation. Not that these are expensive or anything like that, but I don't know. I tend to be rather frugal. Okay, alright. Caribbean. Let's try a little bit more of that Caribbean blue on here. Okay. I feel like I'm staining like a, I don't know, like a piece of furniture or something like that when I'm using this sponge like this. Like, you know, yeah, you usually like use a rag or something like that. Okay, there we go. Looks like it's underwater or something like that, huh? Alright, now here's the, what I wanted to experiment around with, just out of curiosity. Okay, now I did an initial impression of this, but I wanted to try it on a background. Okay, now what I'm talking about in terms of the this mixture of pigment ink and dye-based ink is I want to physically kind of blend the two. I want to have some of the lighter value in addition to the darkest value that you can get, which is black, inherently on this image right here. Alright, now, what I mean by that is, now I could go with two pigment inks. I can go with a black and white pigment ink. I'm gonna just try it with the dye here, though. Okay, so I'm going to go with the Brilliance. Alright, it's just known to dry on glossy cardstock, glossy surfaces, okay? So let's go with something like this right here. Actually, that might be kind of interesting on itself like that. Alright, I'll do that on a future video. I hate it when I start out with these little experiments and I kind of go into one thing and I just completely change course from a video standpoint. I don't mind I always experiment around, and I think you should just change course, but I think that would kind of look interesting like that if it was just stamped out in there like that. But okay, so I'm just going to apply this black ink with a cotton ball. We can't go with this directly into our pad, otherwise we're going to get that white pigment ink in there. So anyway, let's see what we can do here. And just kind of dab it around. It's like, you know, this cotton ball kind of, in a sense, becomes your ink pad. Alright. I'm just trying to assess exactly how much I'm leaving black or how much I'm leaving white. And it's hard to tell, but we'll see. Now see, normally what I do is I just stamp these trees in black, then I'll add on some white highlighting with a white gel pen or something like that. But we'll see if we can kind of incorporate that, you know, those icy edges in the impressions themselves. And I don't know. I mean, we could still use some white gel if this looks okay. It's kind of interesting. I think it almost would have looked better with that kind of little outline, though, huh? Oh, I know. Let's do this here. I think I have an idea here. Maybe. I have an idea, but you know, who knows if it'll work or not. So let's do that for a couple more impressions, okay? And you'll see what I'll do, I think. Okay, so going back in there like so. That amount, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I'll use a little bit more. Actually, I shouldn't have used it so much down the middle right there. Okay, so I think I need more black ink on this one. Or maybe I should just go, I don't know, just straight white in there or something like that and oscillate it. Oh, let's stay with the experiment though. Okay, so. Now these two inks, I mean, they are different types, but it's not like combining like oil and water or something like that, or alcohol and water based. Okay, so they're quite different, but they're not as different as, you know, they could be. All right, let me go in here with this one. Oh, boy, this is so slick here, and it's so gelled up. I just smushed it right there. I just totally mucked it up, but we'll add it. I went like this, and it was so slippery because it's all pigment ink. So, I don't know. That one's just going to have to be farther back in the distance, I think. So that's what you say when you mess up like that. That's what I say. You just kind of incorporate that in with the, you know, the design. Okay, here's that. Now see, that one I just kind of used a little bit less on here. Let's try that. Okay. All right, don't slide it either. All right, I'll just keep it a nice even impression, hopefully. There might be some residual black on there. I couldn't see it if there was, but there could be. Ooh, it's almost invisible like that. That's interesting. It's totally translucent. Did I use less on there? I don't know. All right, well, let's keep going with this. Okay, let me put a little bit more on there. Like that. All right. So that black, I think helped the impressions. Which is interesting to me because that looks really opaque up there. Maybe it's just because I had more of that white in that area on that one anyway. But okay, let's just keep going here and see what we can come up with. I'm trying to tap a little bit less, but I think I put a lot of ink on this one. So I just have little bits of it showing, like about like so. Now it can be said, I mean, if I knew that, I probably didn't need to ink it all the way down with that, you know, that Brilliance white, but I don't know, I didn't know that. If I was to do this again, I would know probably more if I wanted to do it again, if I liked the look. But we'll see. I should really employ, you know, some embossing over the top of this to get some really white, crisp impressions. But okay, that's what we have right now. It's semi-interesting and a lot of terrible, I think, right now. We'll see where this goes, though. I see some promising kind of looks within there, maybe. We'll see. Okay, so that is that. All right. Real kind of silvery touches, you know, kind of within these little spaces right here, which I like. I don't like it as a composition yet, but I don't know. You know, so I always say, you just kind of stick with it, and you know, something might revealed that looks pretty cool. Actually, that's kind of, it's changing right before my eyes. It's the value of the different impressions is different as this dries. This is getting lighter all of a sudden, kind of right in that little space right in here. Okay, now this is completely ghostly and translucent. You know, it's practically transparent, so we'll have to put a darker one down there. Now, I'm not going to fool around. I'm just going to use the Versafine black, because I know that's going to give me a really strong black right in that space there. So Let's just go for it like that. And I just don't think a dye-based black is going to stamp right over the top of a pigment ink, especially when it's kind of wet there. So I think this just has the best chance of it kind of influencing that area. Kind of hesitant to pick this up. Oh. Okay, that's actually exactly what I had hoped would happen. I wasn't quite sure what, stamping black pigment over white pigment would look like, so... Alright. I don't know, I mean, at bare minimum, there's a lot of depth in here, that's for sure. And, of course, there's a lot of variation, just because I have no idea what I'm doing here, so... Okay... Okay, so we have some crisp imagery up front here. You see what when you do, if you have something that's kind of blurry in the background, as long as you put something crisp, I usually put it in the foreground. The blurriness of the background just, I don't know, it becomes kind of a subservient visual to the foreground, and it'll just look like it's farther back in the distance due to what is it called? Diffraction of light, or I don't know what it's called. It's the forms break up a little bit, so things in the distance often look, not quite as distinct as the foreground. So you can kind of incorporate that aspect of things into your piece, which is one of the reasons why I'm always saying just kind of stick with your piece and just kind of see it through to the end, using whatever techniques you're utilizing. Meaning, for me, it's things like, utilization of things like gel pens and pigment ink, highlights are in there. You can add in that kind of crisp element into a scene. All right, now, I really want to put this in the background, but if I stamp this right here, even if I don't stamp this bottom portion, this is still really wet right here, and I don't want to run that into it, so... Oh, maybe I can get this one in here. All right, the question is, though, do I do that in white, or do I do it in black? The black would be too dark in the background, wouldn't it? So let's try this one right here. Okay, let me try going... I'll try tapering it a little bit. I'll try to put more up top. Okay, so I'm tapping more of it on the tip right here to try and get it nice and thick, and then I'll just kind of, gradually tap it less down here. So see that kind of transition? It's going from really thick, and then there's less down here, okay? Maybe I'll just tap off some of it physically too, just with this little paper towel. And let's see if we can get this little leafless one in the background. Okay, it goes down. I've inked it up to about right in there, so. Yeah. Excellent. See that? See that? It's supposed to be in the background, so I just tapered it off there, so it just kind of transitions out of the scene. We need one more back there, don't we? One or two for balance. Maybe right over here. Maybe another piece right in here, perhaps? I don't know. Okay, so let's give it a try. Go a little bit more up top here. Okay. I'm kind of making these ones a little bit taller. Sometimes the tallest of trees are the ones that are kind of dead on the top, you know, because they were the most ancient ones. Okay, see right there. It's kind of changing the spirit of the piece a little bit, doesn't it? You know, just having that kind of, that type of texture in the background, type of form, you know, to contrast against the, you know, the ones with the, you know, with the full pines, pine needles on them, still living. Okay, this one needs to be somewhere out this way or this way. I don't want one right in the middle. It would look too kind of symmetrical. So let's go, just go this one over here, maybe. Right, so you have something like that, and alright, I'm rather invested, I think, in this foreground now, so let's go with a reiteration of form. Okay, so we have that small leafless, look at all that ink that I got up right there. I just have to rinse that off later on the sink. I can't rub it off with this paper towel, otherwise it'll stick to it with that tack and peel all over this. Alright, so let's grab a larger block for my large leafless pine. I'm not going to use the whole thing, I'm just going to use the top of it for my foreground element, or a foreground element, okay? Alright, so I've just inked it up about halfway. I'm probably just going to use the top 3 inches or so, I'm guessing, and we'll just put one right in here. When you do this repetition of form, okay, like this leafless limb is just a larger version of the smaller one, but hopefully, in terms of design, when you have this repetition of form and similar shapes and colors or whatever textures throughout it, it can bring a certain continuity to the piece, and there's kind of visual harmony that's brought about by this repetition. So one of the nice things about rubber stamping and landscape imagery is that there's so much kind of repetition of form out in nature. Okay, they say no two things are exactly alike, but there's certain things that, you know, are very similar, for sure. So you can use a tree, you know, whatever, however many times you want in a scene, and it's not going to look out of place. It's not like, oh my god, there's that same tree used over and over and over again. Okay, let's put another one of these right here. Down here, it was looking a little bit kind of unbalanced. I thought we needed another one right in here. So here we go. It's kind of an interesting look, I think. I mean, this is like a Christmas card or something like that, right? Kind of this wintry thing. But I mean, you could do this in whatever color scheme you want. Just, you know, to fit whatever you're looking for. I mean, this would look, maybe it might look kind of interesting with, I don't know, warmer tones in there, whatever. I think that would be kind of an interesting look. Sunset colors, I don't know. I think if you left white in there somewhere, in the light, it would look okay. Alright, so we have that, and let's do, dare we use some bleed-proof white. I was kind of saying in a previous video that, you know, that bleed-proof white can almost improve anything, even if it's like a daytime type of scene. So opaque white watercolor paint, adding some water to it to reconstitute it and to kind of thin it down. Unless you're using this all the time, you'll need to add water to it periodically. You don't have to mix up the entire bottle, you just need a little bit up top on the top portion of it to utilize. At least how we're utilizing it. The experts would be calligraphers, and asking them how they really use it for their letter form, which would be more important because it has to flow out of, you know, like dip pens. But okay, I need to wash off my old toothbrush here. I didn't wash it off last time, so it's really brittle. So I just need to wash off all the dried paint off of it. We'll be ready to go. As this starts to dry, I think it looks a little better and better. I don't know, it's changing, you know, with each minute that passes by. Which is good. I mean, I'd hate for it to change for the worse. Which can happen sometimes. That's why, you know, like spraying the scenes often kind of brings out the, you know, the vibrancy and saturation after something dries. But okay, now I've made this pretty thin. Maybe I added a little bit too much water, so I'll just kind of take out as much of this as I can here, just so it doesn't drip a big blob of paint onto my scene after I splatter it, or as I splatter it. The thinner it is, you know, the more, you know, chance of that happening is. So, you know, just, you don't have to just dip it, you know, your brush into the paint and go. You can just remove as much as you want before you apply it. So, I don't know. Try to keep in control of your applications, I would say, just in general. Okay, so I'm going with this kind of, you know, flicking of the little brush hairs or whatever. Okay, and I'm getting some variation. I wanted to go for some kind of smaller little flecks in there, but those kind of larger ones look okay too, I think. Now I'm just barely doing this. I'm kind of like pulling one, you know, or a couple brush fibers at a time. So I get a really big one right there. I mean, you could go for something really spontaneous and just, you know, run your thumb like, you know, and it just splatter away like that. But I'm just kind of going like this, really slow. It's going click, you know, I'm pulling this back and each one is going like click, 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 you know, that type of thing. Nothing too kind of immediate. Okay. I don't like to have this right over the top of this because I'm worried about it dripping, so I tend to kind of start from kind of outside. All right, I think that's enough. It's really fun to do, but sometimes I kind of overdo it. All in the spirit of fun, and maybe sacrificing, you know, some look. If you ever do get a big blob of it or something like that, just kind of wait for it to dry, and then just, you know, take a little paper towel like this and just buff it right off, and it'll come right off. Usually without affecting the surface, because this paint really dries fast. It's like chalk or something like that, so it's extremely dry. But anyways, here we go. It's kind of an interesting look back there, I would say, and I think it's a worthwhile kind of, I don't know, technique or whatever. I think I would use it again in future pieces. Okay, let me see if I can add in a little bit more detailing. Now, the white pen, in theory, I don't know if I can draw it over the top of this Brilliance where it's going to stay. You don't want to roller ball over to the top of Pigment ink too much, because you're going to roller some of that ink up into the ball there, and that kind of starts to jam it up a little bit. But maybe I'll do some little kind of stippling work with this, where I'm just kind of doing dots, so I'm not rollering, you know, that pigment ink up into the ball. Again, putting some little details on top of that real kind of blobby impression. Okay, now can you see where there's this black silhouette? Now, the question for me quite often is, do I want to highlight some of these silhouettes in the foreground? I think it looks good both ways. Sometimes it's better just maybe leave it just flat like that than to put some highlights. I'll show you what I'm talking about in here. Like, say for this branch, for example, let's say the light is coming from above, so I can kind of highlight it like this, okay? And I think it looks like snow or ice is on top of the branch, okay? Like that. And it kind of brings this little branch, this treetop, out from the background a little bit more. But sometimes it's nice just to have a nice strong silhouette against the background if there's already a lot of texture in here. So sometimes it's, you know, it might be just too much. Okay, so I'll put a couple little dots. Or maybe it's just somewhere in between. You know, you can just kind of put a few little highlights here and there, but just not overdo it too much. So you get maybe the benefit of just a strong silhouette against the background, but it still has a little bit of highlighting on it like that. I don't know. This piece is very textured, so maybe I'll just leave the rest of it alone. I do think it's going on to the Brilliance quite nicely though, and it is a lighter white than the kind of the more translucent Brilliance, so it's affecting it, and it's just in some areas where, you know, the treetop is fairly white, it's just providing a little bit of contrast against the tree impression. But then where it gets into kind of a more of the darker area, it stands out more. You know, the white dot stands out a little bit more because of contrast. Okay, so there we have it right in here. It looks pretty crazy when I show it like that, really up close, but this is really viewing distance right here. Okay, now let me do something here. I need to underexpose this a little bit more. It's a little bit darker than what this... Okay, this is a little bit more true to the actual value of the piece, if my camera is any indication. Let me try to get this glare out of here too. Alright, so there it is. There's a lot of depth right in here, I would say. I would say that it looks, to me it looks more than 2 layers deep, okay? And we've primarily approached it with just your black foreground like that. Actually, that black foreground is merging with that white background. Let's see that right in here? This was solid black right here, but it's physically mixing with the white that I've stamped it on. And there was more white that I stamped it on here than over here. Over here was that one branch, you know, that just, it stamped out very little, right? So it's more true black right here, but it's physically mixing with it. But I don't really mind that too much. I think it's, I don't know, I think it looks okay like that, to be kind of changing like that. It has this kind of a, I don't know, more of a free-form, not watercolor, but watercolor-ish look to it, you know, just the way things kind of merge in with the, you know, the liquid or something that would be on a piece of paper next to it. So it, you know, whatever I've stamped it on is affecting that. But what's interesting is, oh, okay, because this one right here isn't just straight white. I covered up more of this impression with the black ink behind there, so this one's not changing too much. Anyways, but that, I don't know, I think that looks too bad though. I think that's what gives it a little bit more depth in terms of this multi-layered distance-wise, field of view within this piece here. So certain trees look a little bit more farther back in the distance. We have kind of a middle ground one, and then we have our foreground here. And then with something like this, having a little bit of a lighter side to that tree, instead of it looking just like a flat, you know, thing right in front of there, it is changing a little bit. And that being said, I mean, if you have some like tree dyes or something like that that you can cut out in black, you can put those against the front there too, and that would really push this kind of idea of near and far within the piece. So there's all kinds of different possibilities. You can do things like embossing maybe as well. I'm not sure how that would work. Maybe you'd have to let the Brilliance ink dry quite a bit, you know, before you embossed maybe some foreground. The background, maybe you can emboss some things in there, or some background trees you can do in silver or something like that and play around with that type of dynamic. But anyways, I think there's some worthwhile things to investigate in here in the future, and I don't know, it's kind of a fun look. I wouldn't say it's a fun technique, but it is also the first time I've really done that where, you know, you're taking something, you know, like this, and you're physically mixing or layering two different types of inks together to make one impression with. But I do like the look, and I do like some of the elements or aspects within that look in there. So it's about how dark it is. It's the glare of the light there. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section, or if you do this yourself, maybe let us know what you came up with. Okay? Alright, thanks. If you like this video, hope you liked, share, and subscribe.